Using multiple layer styles can help to achieve detailed and 3D looking effect. Hit Ctrl N case combination and create a new document with 900 by 675 pixels size. Set the foreground color to 2C353C and the background color to 191919. Pick the gradient tool and choose the foreground to background gradient fill, and then click the linear gradient icon. After that, click and drag from the bottom left corner of the document to the top right corner to create a background gradient. Go to File, Place, and put the texture 31 on top of the background layer and rename it to background texture. Then change the blending mode to multiply. After that, hit Alt-Shift-Ctrl-B case combination to convert the texture to black and white. Create a text you want to use in all caps using E5EAEC color code and set the tracking value to 100%. Duplicate the text layer 4 times using Ctrl-J case combination. After that, change the last 3 copy layers fill value to 0%. Double-click on the original text layer and then apply the stroke effect with the following settings: size 10, color 7E, 7E, 7E. Duplicate the original text layer and rename the copy to stroke 1. Right-click on the layer and select Rasterize Layer Style. Then change the fill value to 0%. Duplicate the stroke 1 layer, rename the copy to stroke 2, and drag it below the original text layer. Double-click the original text layer again, select Bevel and Emboss and use the following settings: Style Stroke Emboss, Size 5, Gloss Contour Cone Asymmetrical. Then check the anti-aliased box and set the highlight mode to Vivid Light and the opacity to 100%. After that, change the shadow blend mode to Multiply, color to black, and the opacity to 75%. Add the contour with the following settings: half round, and then check anti-aliased box. Double-click on the stroke 1 layer and add Bevel and Emboss with the following settings: size 2, check the anti-aliased box, then change the color of the shadow mode to 676767 and set the opacity of both modes to 75%. Add the contour using Cone Inverted and check the anti-aliased box. Add a gradient overlay with the following settings: blend mode Soft Light, opacity 51%, style Reflected. Use the Stovepipe 150 gradient fill and then double-click on the stroke 2 layer and apply drop shadow with the following settings: distance 15, spread 0, size 7. Double-click on the first copy of the text layer and apply stroke effect with the following settings: size 1, fill type gradient, style Reflected, angle 90. Use the Steelpipe 60 gradient fill. Then add an inner shadow and use the following settings: blend mode Normal, color code 2C5C99, distance and choke values 0, size 18. Add a drop shadow with the following settings: distance 16, spread 0, size 9. Double-click on the second copy of the text layer and apply bevel and emboss. Set the depth to 297, size to 35, and check the Use Global Light box, and then set the angle to 108 and attitude to 42%. Afterward, check the anti-aliased box, set the highlight mode to vivid light, and the opacity to 64%. Finally, change the opacity of the shadow mode to 0%. Click on the gloss contour icon to create a new contour. Create 2 points with the following values: input 71, output 72 for the first point, and input 42 and output 34 for the second point. Add a contour to the layer and use Cov Deep, and check the anti-aliased box. Add a stroke and use the following settings: size 1, position inside, fill type gradient, angle 90 degrees, style reflected, and use the Stovepipe 155B gradient fill. Double-click on the third copy and apply a bevel and emboss with the following settings: style inner bevel, depth 100, size 21, uncheck the global light box and set the angle to 53 degrees and attitude to 64. Check the anti-aliased box, then set the highlight mode to vivid light and the opacity to 75%, and then change the shadow mode opacity to 24%, blend mode to multiply, and the color to black. For the contour, change it to linear and check the anti-aliased box. And for the last copy, we will use the bevel and emboss with the following settings: size 21, then uncheck the Use the Global Light box and set the angle to 108, attitude to 74. Then change the highlight mode to vivid light, opacity to 75%, and change the shadow mode opacity to 0%. Add a linear contour with anti-aliased box checked. Set the foreground and background colors to black and white. Create a new layer on top of all layers and call it Text Texture. Then go to Filter, Render, Clouds. After that, go to Filter, Filter Gallery, Brush Strokes, Accented Edges. Then change the white to 2, the edge brightness to 38, and the smoothness to 5. Change the blending mode of the layer to Soft Light. Control-click a text layers icon to create a selection. With the text texture layer still selected, click the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel to create a new mask. Click the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel and choose Hue Saturation. Check the Colorize box and then change the hue value to 200 and saturation to 25. Right-click on this new layer and select Create a Clipping Mask. Change the blending mode to Soft Light. And this is how our image should look like after the manipulations listed above. Click B to activate the brush tool. Select one of the water splash brushes. And set the foreground color to E8, E, C, E, F. And create a new layer on top of the background texture and call it Splash. Then resize the brush to 1000 pixels and add it behind the text. Double-click on the splash layer and use the bevel and emboss effect with the following settings: size 5, then check the use global light box and change the highlight mode to vivid light and the shadow mode to multiply. Afterward, change both opacities to 75%. Add the half-round contour and check the anti-aliased box. Change the blending mode of the layer to vivid light and the fill to 35%. Create a new layer above all the layers and call it Sparkles. Pick one of the brushes from the Stars and Flares brush set and change the size of the brush to about 100 pixels. Add a couple of sparkles at the edge of some of the letters. Then click Create a new adjustment layer at the bottom of the Layers panel and select Gradient Map. Use yellow, violet, orange, blue gradient and then set the blending mode to multiply and the opacity to 3%. Here's our final result. Using those simple techniques, we can create different types of the text effects in Adobe Photoshop.